Greetings everyone, and welcome back to our channel. It's been a turbulent period across the globe, with numerous significant events unfolding. Today we're going to delve into one particularly volatile situation that's been brewing for quite some time now, focusing on the potential for seismic shifts within the Russian Federation. The focus is not solely on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, where Russia finds itself embroiled in a grueling stalemate, but we're also looking at the growing specter of internal conflict. The likelihood of a civil war in a country as diverse as Russia is increasing daily, and one of the key pressure points is undoubtedly the North Caucasus. All eyes are now on Chechnya, a region with a history of resistance against Moscow. As the Russian Federation is pressed in the war in Ukraine, the possibility of its internal problems coming to the fore is increasing significantly. The Chechen people, known for their long and fierce resistance to Russia, find themselves amid a rugged and mountainous terrain. They now seem to be ignited by a new aspiration for liberty. This determined and stubborn group, having given Russia considerable challenges in the past with two major wars, is poised to demand accountability for the loss of their homelands, villages, and cultural identities. Back in 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved, Chechnya declared independence from Russian rule. However, this movement quickly plunged into a bloody conflict with the start of the First Chechen War in 1994. The Russian army's heavy bombardments and harsh measures in Chechnya failed to deliver a swift victory. Instead, in 1996, Russia was handed what many would call a defeat. The Chechens gained de facto independence. Then, in 1999, the Second Chechen War erupted. This time, the Russian military, under Vladimir Putin, destroyed Grozny, the Chechen capital, and reasserted control. This conflict resulted in the deaths of thousands and provoked harsh condemnation internationally. Since then, Chechnya has experienced a so-called calm, characterized by intense pressure and financial aid from Moscow. But behind this calm lurks the fear-inducing regime of the puppet leader Kadyrov and a deep desire for vengeance among the people. As we know, history often repeats itself, and we seem to be witnessing the unfolding of similar events in 2025. The discontent directed towards Russia and the craving for freedom among the Chechen population has never been extinguished. Vladimir Putin's difficulties in Ukraine provide the Chechens with an opportunity that they have long been anticipating. Chechen resistance has historically imposed heavy losses on the Russian forces, and now they are eager to repeat these victories. Ramzan Kadyrov, the current head of Chechnya, has constantly expressed allegiance to Vladimir Putin, deploying a vast number of soldiers to the army. He is essentially playing the role of Russia's foot soldier. However, the vast majority of genuine Chechens, especially those in the diaspora in Europe, label Kadyrov as a traitor and a mere puppet who has betrayed their people. For them, Kadyrov taking orders from Putin only compounds the historical tragedies of Chechnya. Therefore, Chechens are seizing upon Russia's weakness in Ukraine to reignite their dreams of freedom. In Ukraine today, two significant Chechen battalions, the Sheikh Mansour Battalion and the Jokhar Dudayev Battalion, are directly fighting alongside the Ukrainian government against Russian forces. These are composed of veterans from the Chechen wars of the 1990s and 2000, alongside a new generation of fighters. These people firmly oppose Kadyrov's pro-Russian stance. They perceive him as a traitor and an aide to Putin. They say that just as they protected their homeland from Russian occupation, they are now standing with the Ukrainian people, fueled by years of resentment and anger. These Chechen fighters, robbed of their childhood in the mountains, say that their lives have been burned to ashes on the battlefield. For them, Russia has destroyed everything that Chechnya once possessed. The brutal bombardments, the annihilated villages, the inhumane acts of the 1990s remain vivid in their memories. This is why the Russian attacks in Ukraine are not surprising for them, because they have seen this since childhood. They often say that they have experienced even worse. The experiences of Mansour, a deputy commander in the Sheikh Mansour Battalion, encapsulate this picture. As a child, he witnessed his village destroyed by Russian forces during the Samashki massacre. Forced from his home, he lived in exile for years. Now he is one of thousands of Chechen fighters who have flocked to Ukraine, saying, "Wherever Russia persecutes, we will stand against it." Mansour has stated, They took my home, my land, my loved ones. They stole everything from me. I have no choice but to confront them. Since the start of 2022, these two battalions have contributed considerably to the Ukrainian military. They've provided vital intelligence on Russian positions, especially in the Donbass region. They have given Kiev essential data such as Russian routes, ammo caches, trench layouts, and location of command centers, data filtered through the guerrilla experience of Chechen fighters. The Chechens are not only settling scores with Russia on the Ukrainian battlefield, they have also begun to promote the concept of their own territory, breaking free from Russian dominion. A society that has been groaning under the repressive regime of Kadyrov for many years is now thinking, with Russia so weakened, we can declare full independence, although some hold that they need to witness the complete collapse of Russia and Ukraine to do so. The general sentiment is that they will definitely revolt at the first opportune moment. Everything initially is hinged upon the Putin-Kadyrov alliance. Kadyrov ascended to power after his father, Ahmad Kadyrov, pledged loyalty to Russia. For many years, he has consolidated his dictatorship in Chechnya with enormous monetary support from the Kremlin. In return, he took on duties for Russia, including providing troops and special units for the army. However, it's widely believed that once Putin weakens, Kadyrov's support will evaporate, and the Chechen people could easily overthrow this puppet leader. At that juncture, Chechnya's independence aspirations might open up a new front for Russia. This is Putin's greatest fear, because a spark in the Caucasus could potentially extend to other regions like Dagestan and Ingushetia, triggering a domino effect in the Russian Federation. The Russian army is already drained and demoralized in the Ukrainian war. Should a major uprising break out at home, Putin might have to make concessions. Russia cannot sustain two conflicts at once. Perhaps this could mark the end of Putin's rule, according to war experts. Chechens are also expressing the same sentiment. Ukraine shares our fate, and if they come close to victory there, we will mobilize to expel Russia at home. The present situation is extremely worrying for Putin. Russia's adventure in Ukraine is only serving to incite this society in this volatile area. The Chechens, who in recent times spoke of a 400-year reckoning, continue to say, whoever came from Tsarist Russia to Stalin, from Stalin to Putin, pushed on us, but we did not die. Now the question of how full independence can be achieved in Chechnya, while Russia is floundering, is being asked more loudly on the mountain peaks. Numerous actors, from exiled leaders to battalions, are awaiting a critical moment. This powder keg in the Caucasus, ready to explode, is watching the developments in Ukraine very closely. In turn, the stage is being set for a domestic uprising, possibly leading to Kadyrov's ouster or flight. On Kadyrov's side, the situation is different. With great fanfare, Kadyrov announced that he had sent 12,000 Chechen soldiers to Ukraine. He lined up large troops, chanting the takbir in squares and stadiums. But the vast majority of these are Kadyrov's salaried men. Not only are they reluctant to fight, but there are also masses who have been forced to the front. This is why Kadyrov's Chechen forces, loyal to the Kremlin, aren't very effective on the ground, apart from propaganda videos. Furthermore, Kadyrov has even criticized Russia's method of governing in Ukraine and made daring statements regarding the employment of nuclear weapons. All of this indicates that the Kadyrov-Putin relationship has become a volatile bomb that could explode at any time. Recent events reveal that the discord between Ramzan Kadyrov and the Kremlin has deepened. So what has transpired between the two, and how did these once close allies come face to face? Ramzan Kadyrov had declared a vendetta against 3 politicians from Russia's North Caucasus region. Kadyrov said that he had officially declared a vendetta against Bakan Barakoyev, Suleiman Karimov, and Rizvan Kurbanov. Kadyrov accused the trio of plotting to assassinate him and of trying to take control of Russia's giant online retailer, Wildberries, from Vladislav Bakalchuk's estranged wife. The Chechen leader has vowed to assist Bakalchuk in winning back his wife and preventing the e-commerce giant from merging with advertising conglomerate Rus. Moreover, Kadyrov called for a number of criminal cases against those who protected Wildberries from Moscow. Anton Gerashchenko, once an advisor to Ukraine's interior ministry, said the dispute between Karimov and Kadyrov was the most serious in a decade. As these conflicts escalate, the Kremlin can only observe. Moscow no longer appears to be capable of controlling or extinguishing this conflict. There are rumors that Russian National Guard and Interior Ministry forces will be redeployed to the North Caucasus. It is also possible that army groups will be strengthened, but all of this remains speculation at this point. Through his actions, Kadyrov is signaling to Putin, "You are not my decree. I am not part of Russia." We see that Vladimir Putin has quietly accepted this and has not taken any action to remove Kadyrov. We even believe that the Kremlin will negotiate with the Chechen leader. Otherwise, a dissatisfied Chechnya might declare its secession from the Russian Federation. This poses a very serious risk to the regime. Putin would then be compelled to withdraw his troops from Donbass and send them to Chechnya, which would essentially mean the end of his rule. Currently, Putin is much more dependent on Kadyrov than Kadyrov is on Putin. Yes, Chechnya receives financial aid from Russia, but in principle, the Chechen leader could cut ties with Moscow and risk it all. Kadyrov has already accumulated resources and is quite self-sufficient. Putin and his security officials comprehend this, so they will swallow the situation once more. The real question is what would happen if Kadyrov's regime collapses, or if he himself withdraws from the scene due to health problems. The Chechen leader, who has been gaining power under Russia's protection, will not feel safe in the region if Putin weakens. In such a scenario, the Chechen opposition could revive the dream of an independent republic of Ichkeria. The battalion named after Dzhokhar Dudayev, who served as head of state during their de facto independence in the 1990s, is already showing signs of this. If victory is achieved in Kiev, we will end the Russian domination in Chechnya, they say. If history gives us another chance, we will never stop liberating Chechnya. The realization of such a declaration of independence would, of course, create significant internal turmoil in the Russian Federation. Once Chechnya revolts, other regions such as Dagestan, Ingushetia, Kabardino-Balkaria, Karachay-Cherkessia, etc., could mobilize, saying, "Why shouldn't we also challenge Moscow?" Putin's army, on the other hand, is already battered, worn out, and demoralized in Ukraine. Chechens view this as an opportune moment. Many Chechen families who have been oppressed under Kadyrov's regime of fear for many years think if the Kremlin's hand weakens, we will be saved. Not only those who live there, but also tens of thousands of Chechens who have fled abroad and live as a diaspora in Turkey, Europe, and the Middle East may return to their homeland to fight for independence. Such an uprising would, undoubtedly, mean a new civil war within the Russian Federation. This scenario is what gives Putin nightmares. While he is expecting triumph in the war in Ukraine, Chechnya again declaring de facto independence could pave the way for the dissolution of Russia. Moreover, the Western world might not be as hesitant as in the past to recognize Chechen independence. In the mid-1990s, the Chechen struggle did not find much support internationally. But now, due to Ukraine, the West, which has turned against Russia, will perhaps extend diplomatic support to the Chechens. As a sign of this, the Ukrainian parliament recently passed a resolution condemning Russia's occupation of Chechnya in the 1990s and recognizing the persecution of the Republic of Ichkeria. Kiev has also frequently stated that it stands with the Chechens and does not recognize Kadyrov as their legitimate leader. In this Kiev-Munich-Paris axis, the Chechen issue may start to be discussed again. The ramifications of this are already being felt in Moscow. Kadyrov has been blasting these diplomatic steps, stating that this is interference in Chechnya's internal affairs. On the other hand, Chechnya is an area characterized not only by nationalist movements, but also by its religious background. Many Chechen identities are religious and conservative, characterizing their resistance against the Russians as jihad. This adds another dimension for Russia. Even though Kadyrov resorts to strange propaganda, such as making it look like jihad to be fighting on the side of Russia, most Chechens do not believe this. For them, the real jihad is the struggle for freedom, defending the homeland and expelling the invaders. Therefore, they say, we have the same situation in Ukraine. Russia is an occupier of Ukraine's freedom and homeland. So, it is jihad to stand by Ukraine. There are many Chechens who claim that Kadyrov is distorting Islam, and this is confirmed in the real meaning of jihad. What happens in Russia depends on the course of the war in Ukraine, but the scenario of a rebellion spreading to Chechnya when Russia is weakened is now more realistic than before. And if this rebellion succeeds, the Chechen people could ultimately declare independence. At this point, the question is also significant. How would the West react to this movement? In the 1990s, the Chechens did not receive the support they expected from the world community. They were largely left alone. Now, as Russia is facing a global backlash, struggling with sanctions and weakening strategic minds in the West, perhaps serious calculations could be made regarding separatist movements in the North Caucasus. This is a factor that strengthens the Chechen position in a Ukraine victory scenario. Europe and the United States might say, why not provide similar support for Chechnya? Of course, everything depends on Russia's performance in Ukraine and its internal stability. However, the fact that even Ramzan Kadyrov is acting independently of Russia shows that the Kremlin is not as secure as it used to be. If Kadyrov acts as a separate center of power, the Chechen opposition may become even more emboldened. There is also a widespread opinion that even if Putin survives this war intact, his relationship with Kadyrov will never be the same again. In this chaos, the Chechen independence aspiration could create a serious explosion. Finally, we can say that Russia's failures in Ukraine may severely shake the ancient fault lines in the Caucasus. Chechens are now more outspoken in saying that our biggest dream is to completely break away from Russia. Simultaneously, hatred against Kadyrov is growing substantially. Putin's adventure in Ukraine may be his own downfall. Because if the Russian Federation is like a circle, if its edges start to crack, the autonomous regions in the center may trigger the risk of total disintegration. The Chechen people see all these possibilities very well and are waiting for their turn. Therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that the Chechen people are truly fed up and will probably declare their independence as soon as Russia is dealt a blow in Ukraine. History will show when this fire, which has been patiently waiting its turn on the mountainside, will ignite. And when that day comes, Russia may wake up to a much larger nightmare. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click like. It is very important for channel development. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Please stick around until the end of the video, where we will draw our conclusions from the analysis. Chapter 7. The situation we've detailed paints a vivid picture of the potential for significant change. The Chechens, hardened by history and fueled by an unyielding desire for self-determination, are clearly not prepared to accept the status quo. The Russian Federation, already grappling with its external conflict in Ukraine, is now facing an internal threat that could prove even more devastating. The key actors, from Kadyrov to the various opposition groups, are all positioning themselves for a moment that could alter the course of history. The events we've described are not isolated. They reflect a broader trend of regional unrest and the fragility of the existing power structures within Russia. The war in Ukraine has acted as a catalyst for this brewing internal conflict. The strain on Russia's resources, the losses suffered by its military, and the growing international pressure have all combined to create an environment ripe for change. The Chechen people, who have endured decades of oppression and conflict, are now seeing an opportunity to realize their dreams of an independent state. The alliances and rivalries we've described also indicate the complexity of the situation. Kadyrov's position, for instance, is both powerful and precarious. His allegiance to Putin has given him significant authority, but it has also made him a target of widespread resentment and opposition. The opposition groups, emboldened by Russia's failures in Ukraine, are now prepared to act decisively when the time is right. The involvement of the Chechen diaspora, with its international connections and a wealth of experience, adds yet another dimension to the equation. These groups are not only fighting on the front lines of Ukraine, they are also actively building support for their cause at home and abroad. The potential consequences are immense, and for the Russian government, the stakes are high. A successful Chechen uprising could trigger a chain reaction, leading to the fragmentation of the Russian Federation and the loss of its imperial control over numerous regions. The international community also has a critical role to play. The West, having turned against Russia due to its actions in Ukraine, may be more inclined to recognize a potential Chechen independence movement. The moral, political, and diplomatic support that could be extended would considerably strengthen the resolve of the Chechens and other groups seeking self-determination within Russia. The diplomatic moves by Ukraine, such as recognizing the persecution of the Republic of Ichkeria, could embolden the Chechen people to act more forcefully. In summary, the present geopolitical landscape is volatile and unpredictable, with many pieces moving simultaneously. the potential for a major internal conflict in Russia is very high, given the conditions and the aspirations of the Chechen people. How these events unfold will depend on a multitude of factors, including the course of the war in Ukraine, the stability of the Russian government, and the actions of the various actors involved. The coming months will likely be decisive, and we will be closely following developments here on our channel to keep you informed on what happens next. Chapter 8. Now let's delve a bit deeper into the military context of the situation we've been discussing. The Chechen conflict historically has been a showcase for the deployment of various types of weaponry and tactics. The 1990s and the early 2000s saw intense urban warfare where Russian forces, initially equipped with weapons like the T-72 tanks and the BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles, faced determined Chechen fighters using a mix of light infantry weapons such as AK-47 variants, sniper rifles like the SVD Dragunov, and RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenade launchers. The mountainous terrain of Chechnya favored guerrilla warfare, with Chechen fighters relying on ambushes and hit-and-run tactics. Russian forces adapted over time, employing more heavy artillery and air power, including the use of Su-25 attack aircraft. Looking at today's situation, the Chechen fighters within the Ukrainian army are likely using weapons in line with those used by the Ukrainian military, which can range from upgraded Soviet-era equipment to more modern Western-supplied arms. We've seen the likes of anti-tank guided missiles like the Javelin and NLA being used by Ukrainian forces, alongside small arms from countries like the United States and European nations. These weapons are quite different from what Chechen fighters had access to during the earlier conflicts. The Russian forces, on the other hand, have been relying heavily on tanks such as the T-90, as well as various models of artillery and multiple launch rocket systems, like the BM-21 Grad, and advanced missile systems. They are also employing drones for both reconnaissance and attack, a technology that was not nearly as prevalent during previous conflicts. The role of propaganda in this situation is quite significant. Both sides are using social media and various media outlets to try and influence public opinion and boost morale. Kadyrov's troops often use high-profile propaganda pieces, showcasing their loyalty to Russia and portraying their actions as a religious jihad. The Chechen fighters alongside the Ukrainian forces, conversely, portray Kadyrov as a traitor to the Chechen people. They highlight the past Russian atrocities and atrocities that happened in Chechnya to galvanize support. This information war is a constant battle, and it is crucial in shaping how the world perceives these events. The tactics currently employed by Chechen fighters in Ukraine involve leveraging their experience in guerrilla warfare, something they are very familiar with. They are experts in utilizing the terrain and fighting in urban areas, making them valuable assets in the Ukrainian army. Their intelligence-gathering abilities are also important, as they can infiltrate behind enemy lines and gather information that is vital for planning military operations. The Russian army, while possessing a large amount of heavy equipment, is encountering logistical problems and struggling with declining morale. They've had to contend with Western-supplied anti-tank weapons that are proving highly effective in neutralizing their armored units. The military picture on the ground is fluid, and things can change very quickly. With the potential for a domestic conflict in Chechnya, these military forces could shift back home, altering the dynamic on the Ukrainian front. The capacity of the Chechen forces in Ukraine and at home to use their previous experience to destabilize the Russian military is something we have to take into account. The prospect of urban warfare in Chechnya, in particular, will create a very dangerous and very unpredictable battlefield. This is a situation that will require a huge amount of scrutiny and will have significant implications for regional stability. Chapter 9. Now let's look at the geopolitical implications that arise from a potential Chechen declaration of independence. If Chechnya secedes from Russia, it could have a domino effect, with other regions of the Russian Federation potentially seeking their own independence. Areas such as Dagestan, Ingushetia, and other republics in the North Caucasus have a shared history of resistance to Russian rule. They could use Chechnya as a catalyst, possibly leading to widespread unrest and destabilization within Russia. The ripple effect could spread across the country, causing multiple conflicts that would stretch the Russian military and political structures beyond their capacity. From a global perspective, such a development could drastically change the balance of power. A weakened Russia could lose its status as a major player on the international stage, creating a new geopolitical landscape. This could impact the relationships between nations and could cause a renegotiation of existing treaties and alliances. A Russia mired in internal conflict might not have the resources to influence conflicts in other parts of the world. Countries that have traditionally been allies of Russia would have to make critical decisions about their future political stances. The West's response to Chechen independence will be a critical factor in shaping the outcome of any potential conflict. If countries like the United States and members of the European Union choose to recognize Chechnya, they would be providing both diplomatic and moral support to the independence movement, and this could encourage other regions to seek similar recognition. This has far-reaching implications. It might also lead to the imposition of further sanctions against Russia and the isolation of Russia on the world stage, further weakening its ability to project power. A positive Western response to Chechnya could greatly empower those seeking liberation within the Russian Federation. The economic consequences of Chechen independence could also be significant. Russia's economy, already strained by the conflict in Ukraine and existing Western sanctions, would suffer further if key regions started to break away. This would impact Russia's capacity to finance both its military and internal infrastructure, creating further difficulties for the Russian government. The loss of valuable resources, the disruption of supply chains, and the decline in investment could lead to economic instability, further increasing the discontent within the Russian Federation. A civil war in this case would also have a huge economic impact on the Russian population. The potential emergence of an independent Chechnya has a much larger international context that could have both positive and negative impacts across many different regions. The reshaping of the Russian Federation could lead to new conflicts in the short term, but it could also provide long-term opportunities for lasting peace and stability if the international community is willing to actively participate in the transition. Chapter 10. Let's consider the historical parallels that provide context for what we're currently observing. Throughout its history, the Russian Empire, both in its Tsarist and Soviet incarnations, has faced numerous internal challenges. Rebellions and independence movements have repeatedly threatened its integrity. The Chechen conflicts of the 1990s and the early 2000s are merely the latest in a long history of resistance. This historic context helps us to understand the depth and complexity of the current situation. It shows that the aspiration for self-determination among Chechens is not a fleeting sentiment, but a deeply rooted cause that has persisted for generations. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 provides a clear example of how internal pressures and separatist movements can cause the downfall of a major power. Similar to the Chechen resistance today, many groups within the Soviet Union fought for their independence, leading to the disintegration of the state. These events demonstrate the vulnerability of centralized regimes when they face widespread dissent. They show that even seemingly stable powers can be easily undermined by the will of their people. The fact that Chechnya declared independence in 1991, soon after the collapse of the Soviet Union, indicates how the events happening at the top can influence movements on the ground. Looking back at the earlier Chechen wars, we can observe similar factors at play. Russia's initial underestimation of Chechen resistance led to a lengthy and costly conflict. The Russian military struggled to adapt to the guerrilla tactics employed by the Chechen fighters, and they were never able to fully assert control over the region. These historical events offer very valuable lessons for today's Russian government. Ignoring the discontent of its people and underestimating their capabilities can have very serious consequences. Furthermore, Russia's history of suppressing separatist movements has only increased the resentment and the desire for freedom, leading to the conflict that we are currently observing. The actions of leaders such as Kadyrov, who have used their positions to strengthen their own power, also have historical parallels. Puppet regimes, historically, have often failed to retain long-term authority when central power structures begin to falter. Kadyrov's reliance on the Kremlin has provided him with immense personal wealth, but this has also turned him into a highly unpopular figure within Chechnya. This means that when Putin's power starts to fade, Kadyrov could lose his grip very quickly, leading to a new phase of internal chaos. The lessons from history are clear. Nations that neglect the needs and the aspirations of their people do so at their own peril. The current situation within the Russian Federation is not an isolated incident. It's a continuation of a long historical trend of oppression and resistance. Understanding this context is crucial to comprehending the potential for significant change in the region. Chechnya's desire for independence is not a new phenomenon. It's a deeply ingrained aspiration, which continues to be fueled by historical grievances. The parallels with the past underscore the precariousness of Russia's current position and the potential for large-scale upheaval in the near future. Chapter 11. As we approach the conclusion of our analysis, let's focus on what we can expect in the near future. The situation in the Russian Federation is characterized by a high degree of uncertainty and many possible outcomes. The war in Ukraine is a central element, and this continues to strain Russia's resources. The fact that the Chechen conflict has gained traction in the middle of this means that Russia is potentially in trouble on two major fronts, and this is not a scenario that it is equipped to handle. The growing unrest within Chechnya is being heavily monitored, and any escalation has the potential to cause a total collapse of the fragile equilibrium that exists. The role of Kadyrov is especially noteworthy. His shifting allegiances and his displays of independence from Moscow show that he is prepared to adapt to the changes that are occurring. If Putin weakens significantly, Kadyrov may look to secure his position by making a break with Russia, or, alternatively, he may be overthrown by the Chechen opposition groups who see him as a major roadblock on the path to independence. These are two very real possibilities, and both have the potential to trigger significant turmoil in the region. The potential for a power vacuum in Chechnya will increase the possibility of conflict between various groups, and this may impact Russia very severely. The internal dynamics within Chechnya are also very complex, and many groups have their own agendas. From the fighters in Ukraine, to the exiled leaders in Europe, and to local community leaders within Chechnya itself, the range of aspirations is vast. Coordination between these different groups will be critical if they are to succeed in the goal of independence. These various Chechen actors all have their eyes on the larger picture, and they are watching the developments in Ukraine with great care. The outcome of the war in Ukraine will be decisive for how the internal conflict will proceed. The support of the international community is also going to play a huge role. If the West signals its willingness to accept Chechen independence, this will provide a lot of political and economic support to the movement. This could lead to further isolation and sanctions for Russia, impacting its ability to respond to the uprising. The Ukrainian parliament's stance on the matter has been a key indicator of how global opinion is turning against Russia, and this provides huge encouragement for the Chechen people and others who oppose Russian influence. The economic implications are also significant. The possibility of Russia having to fight two wars at once is bound to stress the already stretched Russian economy. In conclusion, the coming months are going to be extremely important in shaping the future of the Russian Federation. The intersection of the war in Ukraine and internal conflict in Chechnya may lead to massive changes, and these will have large-scale global consequences. The choices of different political actors and military groups will be crucial in determining how things turn out. We will continue to watch this story closely, and we will keep you informed as it develops. Chapter 12. Now let's bring all of this together and discuss the main conclusions from our analysis. Firstly, the potential for a civil war in the Russian Federation is now a very realistic possibility. The internal stresses, compounded by the conflict in Ukraine, have led to a very unstable environment that can be easily disrupted. The Chechen aspirations for independence are a key factor, and the historic desire for self-determination may finally find a suitable opportunity to be realized. The various groups inside Chechnya are mobilizing to take advantage of Russian weaknesses, and this may trigger wider issues inside Russia. Secondly, the role of Ramzan Kadyrov is a critical element of this volatile situation. His position, both powerful and precarious, has made him a central figure in the struggle. The potential for his removal, or alternatively, for him breaking away from Moscow, could alter the situation radically. Kadyrov's actions are now largely independent from Russia, and this is a sign that the Russian regime is beginning to fracture. The Chechen opposition groups are also prepared to act, waiting for the opportune moment to start their rebellion. The tensions between them and Kadyrov mean that violence in the region is an obvious outcome. Thirdly, the conflict in Ukraine has acted as a major catalyst in the destabilization of the Russian Federation. The losses that Russia has experienced and the strain on its resources have created a window of opportunity for internal opposition movements. The Chechens, in particular, have used the situation to build momentum for their cause. The war in Ukraine, in this instance, is acting as a trigger for a domestic conflict that may have very long-lasting implications. This could lead to the fragmentation of the Russian Federation and its transformation into several smaller independent states. Fourthly, the international community's stance will be crucial. If the West recognizes Chechen independence and provides meaningful support, it will significantly impact the outcome of the conflict. Russia's isolation on the global stage will deepen, and its ability to deal with internal conflict will be seriously undermined. The support provided by Ukraine and other Western allies has the potential to trigger the long-awaited dissolution of the Russian Federation. This, however, is also tied to the success of Ukraine in repelling the Russian forces. Finally, the historical context is vital for understanding the current events. Chechen resistance to Russian rule is deeply embedded in their history, and this has fueled their desire for freedom. The parallels between current events and the earlier Chechen wars and the collapse of the Soviet Union mean that the threat to Russian sovereignty has a deep historical basis. Russia is now paying the price for decades of oppression, and its internal fragility could be its undoing. In conclusion, the situation in the Russian Federation is extremely volatile, and many factors suggest that significant changes are on the horizon. The outcome of the current events is far from certain, but the potential consequences are immense. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click like. It is very important for channel development. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Please stick around until the end of the video, where we will draw our conclusions from the analysis.